So this is going to be my NFL 2022 Week 6 review and recap, part of a series of videos I do where I go over all the games that happened for that particular week, the big picture takeaways and all that kind of stuff in sort of rapid fire form. So we'll start off with Thursday night, Commanders at Bears, back-to-back legendarily bad Thursday night games, and this was another terrible one also. Commanders were able to pull this one off despite another bad QB play from Carson Wentz. The Bears continue to struggle offensively. Yeah, these are two teams going nowhere. The less said, the better. Next, we move on to the Sunday slate, Ravens at Giants. Ravens were favored to win this one, and the Giants were able to pull another game out their ass to where they've just been able to make some major comebacks in the fourth quarter in the second half of these games, and this game was no exception. It was also helped by the fact that the Ravens, well, specifically Lamar Jackson, just made a boneheaded rookie year type interception play, and no team is kicking themselves more than the Ravens. I mean, they've just given away games this year, all three of their losses, to where, you're 3-3, and just all three of those losses are games they easily could have won. So they're in bad shape when it comes to that. But the Giants, hey man, they're in great shape, 5-1. Brian Daboll is definitely making a difference. Next up, we have Jaguars versus Colts. In Indianapolis, is there anything less sexy than an AFC South matchup? Well, I give these teams credit because they're actually able to be both decent, actually pretty good offensively. The Colts, after they had just been looking terrible offensively, they had a decent showing here. Ended up winning this one 34-27. So much for those plucky Jacksonville Jaguars. After a nice start, they've kind of faded 2-4 right now, and they're not completely out of it, but they're definitely not playing to the standard that they played in those first few weeks. Next up, we have Patriots at the Browns. Browns were favored to win this one, but the Patriots ended up winning 38-15, so they really just slammed them. Cleveland's kind of floundering all over the place right now. They actually need Deshaun Watson back as soon as possible. They still have a few more weeks left till they get that. The bigger story is definitely the Patriots. I mean, since Bailey Zappi took over after Mac Jones' injury, I mean, they've just been a lot better offensively the past few weeks. I mean, it started with that Packers game. We're like, whoa, they actually took Green Bay to OT. Granted, that's not looking so impressive now. We'll get to that later. But then they blanketed the Lions 29-0 last week, and now they do this on the road against the Browns in Cleveland. They've been playing really good, and this is actually a real quarterback controversy right here, just because Mac Jones ain't done enough to really sort of automatically get his job back when he's ready and injury-free, just because Zappi is playing much better than he did when Jones was in, and you can see that by the numbers offensively. So with this one, my guess is that Zappi will continue to be the starter until he flounders. So yeah, that's a real quarterback controversy right there. Next up, we have Bengals at the Saints. This game was sort of the fun thing about this one was Joe Burrow back in Louisiana territory after his LSU days. Bengals were able to turn it on in the second half and end up winning this one 30-26. Good win, a needed win for the Bengals. Had they lost another game, they go to like 2-4, and then they're looking in pretty bad shape. But right now, they're looking in solid shape, able to get the win. As for the Saints, just kind of a middling team right now. Next up, Buccaneers Steelers. The Buccaneers were heavily favored in this game. Not quite as much as the Bills were last week, but still favored by a pretty big number in Pittsburgh. But Pittsburgh was able to pull off the shocker here, winning 20-18. Tampa has just not looked great all year. They've just been kind of floundering in terms of offensively. The only time they've been solid offensively was in that Chiefs game, but the Chiefs at that point were up like 2 scores or more during that time, so it was kind of misleading the numbers that they put up. Brady is just kind of having a kind of a grisly year for a lot of reasons, but sticking to on the field, he wasn't great in this game, and they had the thing where he went to go to Robert Kraft's wedding party the night before or something like that. Is he as all in as he had been in previous years? I mean, in some aspects, no. In other aspects, maybe. He was barking at his old line. But if I was one of those old line men, I'd be like, hey, you were out partying the night before and missed loaded like the final team meeting or walkthroughs or something like that. So the Buccaneers, I should mention for the Steelers that Pickett went out in this game and Trubisky was able to take over and made some really big key third downs to really put the game, seal the game for them. So good for them, because the Steelers, it was looking like it was going to be a miserable season, and it still will be, but this was a nice feel-good win for them, and one that a lot of people definitely did not see coming. Next game, 49ers at the Falcons. Falcons were able to win this one 28-14. So the Falcons actually look like they were obviously a much better team than people anticipated with their record and how they are now, actually tied with the Buccaneers. Granted, it's a 3-3 record, but still, they've definitely put themselves in contention for the playoffs, given how sort of middling and unimpressive the NFC as a whole is. Next up, we have Jets at the Packers. Now, the Packers were favored in this one, but I think everyone smelled this result coming because the Jets won this one 27-10. Just because the Packers, I mean, the week before, they blew the lead against the Giants in London, and they did not look up impressive offensively. They've really had one game all year that they've been mostly a competent, solid effort team, and that was against the Bears, and that's not exactly a super impressive win. But this one in Lambeau, people sort of smelled this result coming despite the line on this game, Packers being favored. And yeah, the Packers, man, just not looking good at all. And this is going to be a grizzly year so far for Brady. I think it's going to be an even more grizzly year for Rodgers. I just don't think his leadership style and kind of what's going on with his team, how they're playing, the coaching has not been good. Yeah, I had Minnesota winning this division anyway, and it's looking like it may be easier than I even thought, just because the Packers just look like they don't have it. But for the Jets, definitely some good stuff going on for them so far this season. Robert Saleh, his sort of impact is sort of making doing a lot better now. I'll put it that way. The defense has been really good. Offense is not great. Look at Wilson's numbers, but still, a win's a win. Next up, Vikings at the Dolphins. Vikings won this one 24-16. Yeah, the Dolphins are floundering also. I mean, just their QB situation is just like one gets knocked out after another. So they really need Tua back so they can get back on track in terms of where they started at the beginning of this season. As for the Vikings, they're 5-1 now. Is there any more really kind of less impressive 5-1 team than the Vikings? Yeah, it's not like they've looked great, but they've taken advantage of just, a division where no other team has looked good. And they're 5-1 and definitely in the driving seat to win the NFC North. Panthers at Rams is the next game in LA. This was sort of a get-right game for the Rams that they desperately needed. But even then, they didn't get off to a great start. I saw the Rams firsthand at the Cowboys game last week, and they did not look great at all. Haven't looked great all season. This was a game that had they lost this one, you could stick a fork in them. Right now, just like I said, just because the NFC has been so unimpressive, they're in okay shape. But even this game, it's not like there was an impressive effort for them. I guess probably the even bigger story is that the Panthers is just the fire sale team right now. At the time I'm recording this morning, they actually traded their receiver, Anderson, gave him to, the Cardinals, traded him for a few picks. Likely, if they get the right offer, they're going to be trading McCaffrey soon. It's just the all-time fire sale, and they are the worst team in the NFL right now. Next up, Cardinals at the Seahawks. Pretty unimpressive game. Seahawks won this one in Seattle 19-9. Seahawks, they're surviving without Wilson, 3-3 right now. Sometimes they're putting up bigger numbers offensively. This one, not so much. The Cardinals, that's another team that's just stinking it up right now. Their season will really start when Hopkins comes back this week after his PED suspension. So we'll see if they can get back on track. And like I said, they were the team that made the trade with the Panthers for Anderson. We'll see if that helps them out. But yeah, they got to get things going like now. And then the marquee matchup of the early windows, Bills at the Chiefs, rematch of the epic divisional round game from last year. Just an all-time classic. This one, once again, in Kansas City. I had picked the Bills to win this one, and they pulled it out 24-10. It was a real back-and-forth game. It was within one score for basically the entire game. The Bills made their final drive with Allen just making some unbelievable plays. I mean, that guy is just an absolute beast, and he's definitely the MVP so far. But even then, when they end up scoring and they left like a minute left, it's all like, oh man, I think they left too much time for Mahomes. But surprisingly, Mahomes, he wasn't able to come up in this one, had the interception to basically seal the game for the Bills. But yeah, anytime these two teams play, anytime you see these two quarterbacks, it's going to be a classic. And this is definitely the type of thing the NFL wants for years to come between these two teams and these two quarterbacks. It's just great stuff. The Sunday night game was Cowboys versus the Eagles. Eagles won this one 26-17. Now, as a Cowboys fan, I was sort of riding high off that Cooper Rush momentum. I thought, you know what, I didn't think they'd win the game in LA, and they won that one. So I think, they'd win this one. And as it turns out, they got off to a terrible start. They're down like 17-0 or something like that. They were able actually to play pretty well in the second half, but the Hurts was able to put them away with one big drive in the fourth quarter. As for the Eagles, yeah, it was a good win for them. One that they needed more than the Cowboys. Had the Cowboys won this one, that would have been just like, whoa. Now that's impressive. And Prescott is like, all right, you're going to be on the sidelines until further notice. Because of the type of game that Cooper had in this game, 3 interceptions, I think Dak, it's all but guaranteed to start the next game at home in Dallas versus the Lions. And so, yeah, it'll be sort of Dak back in the total. But Cooper Rush, hey, great stuff winning the 4 out of 5 games. That was super impressive. So at the time I'm recording this, actually the game between the Broncos and Chargers has not started yet. That's 3 hours ahead of time. Given my work schedule, I just figured it'd be better to do this recording right now. As for that game, I have the Chargers winning. It's going to be in SoFi Stadium, so it'll be a great setting for Monday Night Football. Yeah, Chargers have overall definitely played better than the Broncos this year. That'd actually be a little surprising if the Broncos won, but given these divisional rivalries, you never know. So overall, yeah, the Sunday slate, solid slate of games, obviously highlighted by the Bills-Chiefs game. That was fantastic. That's going to be a classic. But a whole lot of upsets. We can talk about the Buccaneers-Steelers one, the Packers-Jets, Giants-Ravens to some degree. Yeah, it goes to show you never know what's going to happen. So that'll do for this recap video. I'll be back next week for week 7 with another recap video, and hopefully this week with the start of the NBA season, because I'm a big NBA file also. So stick around for those. So if you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.